It's Friday edition of Your Business Nigeria. Moving on now, despite macroeconomic challenges confronting the Nigerian economy, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in its recently released report, disclosed that the country retained its position as the biggest economy in Africa in the year 2021, with a value of $480.5 billion, followed by Egypt with a value of South Africa should be next, $415.3 billion, followed by Egypt, $396.3 billion US dollars. According to the IMF, Nigeria's fiscal deficit is projected to widen in 2021 to 6.3% of GDP, despite high oil prices. The fund observed that there are significant downside risk to the near-term fiscal outlook from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, weak security situation and spending pressure associated with the electoral cycle, hereby advising government to address persistent foreign exchange shortages, which is negatively impacting investors' confidence. I have joining me live virtually from Abuja is the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Dignity Finance and Investment Limited, Dr. Chijioke Ekechukwu. Good afternoon, Dr. Ekechukwu, and it's really good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I know you can hear me. Let me ask you the question first and foremost. What's your reaction most times when you get reports from the likes of the IMF, the likes of the World Bank, talking about our figures and positioning our economy? Many will say that a lot needs to be done and we cannot even believe some of these figures at times. What are the fundamentals? But to you as a professional, how does it come to you when you get to hear this or see these figures or see all of these rebasing details coming from the IMF?
Yeah, obviously we have to believe the IMF figure, and we also have to believe the statistics they have shown us. When these figures come to us, what we have to do is just to accept them in goodwill, and then know that we can actually do far better than what we're doing right now. It's interesting to know that we are still topping that chart, but I can say it is not yet Uhuru, because when you look at all the other economies, we are still topping them. And whatever thing that may have affected us currently may also be affecting other countries, especially COVID-19. But of course, when we consider the fact that when the COVID-19 issues are done with, we will be faced alone with a major issue of our insecurity, which other countries may not be suffering from right now. So that is just why I said it's not yet Uhuru, because today, the gap between Nigeria and South Africa in terms of GDP figures is just very thin. And so it is very likely that if we don't do anything about the odds against us, we may actually be playing a second fiddle, number 2 or number 3 position if care is not taken. So right now, you know that there are non-oil exports are growing, and you also know that the GDP growth is being experienced from the non-oil exports. And so with that, you just know that we are doing well. We are doing well. The ICT is doing well. Agriculture is doing well, and services doing well. So when we continue to do well, if all things being equal, we'll sustain this position. But we need to still do something about the insecurity that has been deviled us.
The same IMF has come out on many occasions to talk about subsidies, of course, both on PMS and on electricity, saying that's not the way to go. Another key issue that the IMF has always been talking to Nigeria about, talking about policymakers and all of that, is the issue of Forex, allowing flexibility, allowing the law of demand and supply to take charge when it has to do with foreign exchange market and dealings. But we seem not to have taken all of this 100%, and we seem to still be performing fairly well. What do you think?
Not all the time that IMF will say those things that will favor Nigerians. For example, when IMF suggests that all the subsidies be removed, they are not considering the impact of removal of subsidy on the citizens of Nigeria. They're only considering the fact that they want the economy of Nigeria to grow. They're only considering the fact that they want the revenue base of the country to grow. But the impact of this to the citizens of Nigeria many times are not considered by IMF when they usually come up with things like this. On the issues of subsidy on electricity also, and subsidy, like I said, on petroleum products. Now, coming to foreign exchange, honestly, that is one of the greatest problems we have today, because hovering around the foreign exchange space, we have the inflation rate rising up. We have a whole lot of things depending on this. We just know that it's not possible for people to meet 100% of their demand of foreign exchange, and that has actually affected prices of goods and services. And so it's actually making it difficult for the citizens of Nigeria to have a quality life and a good standard of living. And so, but when we say float this, if we float the foreign exchange market, it's going to be a disaster, because by the time you hear the exchange rate that we are going to be having, it's going to be a disaster, and it's going to be very embarrassing, and it's actually going to affect us adversely. However, I'm sure you also know that when you have such devalued currency and you have it high enough, you're going to be having a lot of exports. Many times, some countries actually purposely devalue their currencies in order for them to have a lot of exports. Everybody will become an exporter, and that is actually the kind of thing we're looking at. But I'm not really saying that we should float this foreign exchange market, because the impact, the effect is going to be very injurious to us, because the size, the gap between the demand and the supply of foreign exchange is so huge. And we need to, that is actually why CBN is there, to just bridge that gap. So I also expect that CBN should continue to intervene, at least for now, and while working on all the other things that have been affecting our imports. For example, petroleum products. By the time we have the refineries work at even a reasonable capacity, all the monies we've been spending on importation of petroleum products will be reduced, and many other things. And we also expect that many manufacturers of goods should consider a lot of backward integration and look inwards for alternative sources of their raw materials instead of from within, instead of depending so much on imported goods. If we can do that, and if every manufacturer can do that, and if everybody utilizing capacities can do that, and let us source for everything that we need from within here, I am sure that we're going to actually reduce our dependence on imported goods. And that also will bring us a little bit of some kind of balance in our trade deficits, in our trade balance.
Now, Doctor, let's look at these figures again. Nigeria, $480.5 billion. South Africa, $415.3 billion. Egypt, $396.3 billion. Algeria, that's fourth, $163.8 billion. Now, I'm looking at all of these figures, and I'm looking at African countries really uniting and, and coming together, doing business, trade and all of that, doing business with each other. What do you think would happen if that really, if that is actualized? Because, that seems to be like the way to go. If we take advantage of all of these opportunities that we have, before we even move to the untapped industries, the telecoms, the IT, the music, what do you think Africa can do better?
Yeah, a few days ago, I was in Lagos as a guest speaker at an event organized by Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria and CISLAC. And what it was all about was just how African countries can actually integrate all services and take advantage of AFCFTA and ensure that we just concentrate on Africa. And a whole lot of things, sprang up in all the discussions we had. And so it's also good that you are talking about it today. We really can, I gave example with the fact that Zambia produces the largest quantity of copper that we use in being wires for electrifying wiring houses and factories. And if we want to import copper, we don't go to Zambia to import it. We go to Europe, or probably we'll go, so we're not importing copper directly from Zambia, that are the biggest importers of, manufacturers of copper. And so that happens with many other African countries that are not taking advantage of their competitive advantage that they have. So if African countries can really do their transactions, I know, the provisions of AFCTA is the fact that countries can actually exchange their currencies among themselves. And so what we need to do is just to create a very good sea link between amongst African countries, and of course build up our bilateral air service agreement, and to the extent that African countries can really fly to themselves seamlessly. But we don't have that. You discover that when you want to go from Nigeria to a country like, say, Sierra Leone or even Gambia, you have to go to 2 other African countries before you reach those countries. This shouldn't be so. And so we need to take advantage of what we have, because we're just heavily endowed. All African countries have something they have to offer to Africa. And so what we need to do is just to take advantage of them, and not think that we have to rely on what comes from the Western world before we import them. So AU needs to do some more work by creating sea links and creating air links amongst African countries. That we can do in order to reduce the overdependence on Western world.
Dr. Let's also look at those sectors I mentioned: telecoms, IT, music, online sales, film production. This sector seems to be doing really well at the moment and trying to help the figures coming from the rebasing. What more can be done to harness the potentials of these sectors?
Yeah, if you look at the non-oil sector that has been sustaining our GDP growth, you see that these sectors you mentioned have been contributing a lot to our GDP. So if we see that if we have identified that we're doing well, especially in ICT, in service, and probably in agriculture and gaming and things like that, is it not an opportunity for us to actually do more in those areas and grow more in those areas? In other words, if you discover that out of 9 subjects you're doing, you are very good in 3, and all you do sometimes, apart from making sure that the other ones you're also understanding very well, if I have to take that decision, I will make sure that the ones I am very good at, I will still score my A in them and score more. And so we have this advantage over many African countries and many countries of the world. In fintech and ICT, I think we are probably one of the top 10, and we need to take advantage of that and grow that particular sector very well. It's easy for us to really grow our GDP figures even more than what we have today by concentrating and putting in a lot of efforts in some of these sectors that are doing well right now. And we're not optimizing opportunities we have, especially in agricultural sector, in ICT. And so these are the things we need to do. Imagine if every state governor or every state government decides to have a greenhouse farm where they will just grow all kinds of things, pepper, tomatoes, and okra, and beans, and things like that. Imagine if all the 36 states are doing that. Of course, we are going to be having a lot of food sufficiency, and we're going to be exporting a lot of it, because the market will be awash with all those agricultural products. And so export can start taking place from there. But we are not getting this kind of efforts from the states. Most of the policies are coming from the federal government, and we need to actually integrate the state governments to be interested in things that are actually changing the economy of our country. If all the states participate in all of this, I can tell you these figures are going to be increasing far more than what we have currently, all things being equal.
Okay, before I let you go, Dr. Ekechukwu, President Buhari also said in Dubai, I think late last week, that Nigeria remains the most viable and attractive investment destination in Africa. That's exactly the way the president put it. we're talking resources here, population here, and all of that. Now, what deliberate policies do you think government needs to now start looking at, programs to support private investment across sectors?
Yeah, there are so many things that need to be done. You know, an average investor, whether local investor or direct foreign investor coming into Nigeria, will be looking at so many things. One of it, which I have always mentioned, is insecurity. So we need to fight that. We need to fight that because that is inhibiting a whole lot of things. And if that is done, the issue of ease of doing business, we need to take it more seriously than we are taking it right now. If out of all these, all the items that are constituting the ease of doing business, we are able to even achieve half of them, up to 80%, would have been seen to be doing very well. But it doesn't look like we have achieved even up to 30% of the targets of ease of doing business index. And so we need to work on that so that investors can look at Nigeria as an investment destination for themselves, so that they will continue to think that, because we have all the resources, we also have the population, we have the economy. So when any particular firm or any particular country wants to do business in Africa, Nigeria is number one destination they're looking at. So, but when we look at Nigerian destinations and opportunities, they will obviously want to stay away because of one thing or the other that I've mentioned. We need to also make sure that corruption, which has been a bane in the growth of this country, be removed, or at least reduced in a very reasonable extent. These are some of the things affecting us. Otherwise, we have all the potentials to actually be a major destination of business. Instead of people closing down their businesses and going to neighboring African countries, this is not so good at all for us. However, I think in spite of all the headwinds that we're having, we're still doing very well. We're still doing very well, and you know, we continue to struggle. Nigerians are very resilient people, and in all situations, we still find opportunities out of all of them, and that is actually what is sustaining us in the entire journey.
So finally again, if we can do this in 2 minutes, the fear of Omicron variant, that's also something that is sending shivers all across. Everyone is worried because they don't know to what extent this might affect trade and all of that. Dr. Ekechukwu, what are you projecting for Nigeria as we move to 2022?
In terms of economic growth?
Yes.
Oh, yes. You know, each time I speak, I say all things being equal. All things being equal, to the extent that we expect that if the way it is today remains, even with the level of insecurity, if it still remains, we are going to be growing more than what we have grown already, because a lot of opportunities are opening up. And the businesses are beginning to grow, especially in the tech industry. A lot is happening in that area, and if only we can measure the size of that sector and market, we will just marvel with what we're seeing in that sector. And so we are expecting that, all things being equal, we're going to sustain growth, and we will gradually grow. Of course, as we are growing also, don't forget that the population is also growing. So the two of them, one is pursuing the other, and the distance the population growth is given the economic growth is so, the gap is so much. So that is just why no matter what we appear to be doing, hunger and poverty appear to be also staying with us. So we need to do everything to ensure that the economic growth, that at least the one we can manage, knowing and hoping that the oil price does not drop again against us. So these are all the things that I say, all things being equal.
I must thank you so much. I've been speaking to Dr. Chijioke Ekechukwu. He is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer for Dignity Finance Investment Limited, also a past Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much, and do enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Always my pleasure. Thank you.